Hello everyone, welcome back to Paperback Thoughts. Today I'm back with another Hemingway book. I should seriously start reading other authors also. Knowing what Hemingway did in his early adult life, which is during the World War I, will help you get a lot more out of this novel. Hemingway during World War I really wanted to be part of the frontline soldiers, that is, be part of the action. Initially, when he went for the army selection or the soldier selection, he could not get in because of his eyesight. He had short-sightedness, so he was rejected in the fitness test. He was obviously very sad about it, and he felt left out, because that was a cool thing to do during a World War I, because men were supposed to enlist themselves as soldiers and go for war and fight for their country. A bad time to be alive, but as it turns out, the Italian front came for recruitment, and Hemingway thought that is a good opportunity, even though they were coming for ambulance drivers, not frontline soldiers. And what he did is he actually memorized the eye test chart, and he passed the fitness test for the ambulance driver. And obviously, being an ambulance driver, he was left out of a lot of action that was happening in the war. But what really helped Hemingway in writing his war stories is the close friendship that he maintained with the soldiers who went to the front line and came back after fighting. So he was really close friends with these people, which is very evident when you read these characters in his especially war stories. The kind of insights that you get is almost similar to that of someone who had actually gone out and fought for the country. A lot of plot points and a lot of characters, especially in this book, A Farewell to Arms, comes from these interactions that Hemingway have had with these frontline soldiers. This book is entirely set during World War I, even though a work of fiction. There are a lot of autobiographical references from Hemingway's life brought into this book. This book is all about living and loving during World War I. The first thing that will strike you if you're coming to this book after reading other works of Hemingway is that the narrative is very linear. It doesn't jump around a lot like it does in other works of Hemingway. The story starts off with this brilliant narration of a narrator describing the nature that surrounds him, and he quickly changes the tone to what war is doing to that kind of setting, which is brilliant writing, I would say, because that's one of my favorite first chapters of any Hemingway book that I've read. To give you a taste of it, see where the narrative kind of switches from describing the beauty of nature to war. In the bed of the river there were pebbles and boulders, dry and white in the sun, and the water was clear and swiftly moving and blue in the channels. Troops went by the house and down the road, and the dust they raised powdered the leaves of the trees. By the end of the first chapter, the reader also kind of gets a taste of how trivial the concept of death is during the times of war. At the start of the winter, there is a cholera outbreak, and he ends a sentence with, "But it was checked, and in the end, only 7,000 died of it in the army." So even 7,000 people dying out of a cholera is not a big deal. The narrator doesn't seem to be shaken, or he seems to be okay with the fact that only 7,000 died. Things like these in the first chapter actually prepares you for what lies ahead in the novel. And later on in the narrative, we come to see that the narrator's name is Frederick Henry. Also, we get introduced to some very interesting, one of the most appealing characters in the book is Rinaldi, his Frederick's friend. We don't get to see much of him, unfortunately. I would really love to have, read an entirely different novel only about Rinaldi, because he's a lovable character. And then Rinaldi is who introduces Frederick to Catherine Barclay, and Frederick is clearly shown as interested in starting a romantic relationship with Catherine Barclay. Catherine Barclay had a fiance who died in the front line while fighting in the war, and Frederick wants to run away from the fact that they're living this very terrible, hopeless, stressful life, and Catherine Barclay want to run away from the fact that her fiance died. They find each other as solace, and that's kind of feels like the base where they start their relationship. And Frederick is shown as not being very serious about Catherine. He's just there for the fun part of the relationship, and Catherine is also kind of aware of it, even though she wants Frederick to be more serious in their relationship. So that's how the brutal love story of Frederick and Catherine starts off in the book, and throughout the rest of the book their love story is placed in the narrative as though with equal importance with the fact that there is a world war going on. So they're kind of two major pillars of the story for the rest of the narrative. Frederick gets injured in one of the shell fires, and he's moved to a hospital, faraway hospital meant for American soldiers, and that's where Catherine also moves to that hospital, kind of gets a transfer to that hospital, and that's where they actually really truly fall in love. And once that happens, there is this war inside Frederick between the actual war that's happening and and Catherine, who he now truly loves and want to spend his rest of his life with. The one thing I thought Hemingway continuously went back to is about the nature of personality of human beings during troubled times like a war. And just like any other major works of Hemingway, even this book follows the iceberg theory, where we are only shown things at surface, and kind of a lot of things are unsaid that the reader have to read between the lines or think about it and kind of make sense out of everything. I had a wonderful reading experience, and if you don't find this book in your local bookstore, you can use the Amazon link that I've given in my description. Thank you so much for being here. See you next week with another book.